growing up in a chaotic home and trying to make sense of a complex relationship with your alcoholic mother. Welcome back to another episode of Irrepressible, ordinary people with extraordinary resilience. And in this episode, I speak to my good friend and inspiration, Kelly Pegg, about her life growing up in a chaotic home and trying to make sense of her relationship with her alcoholic mother. As ever, Kelly is raw and honest in this interview and shines light on the contradictions and the complex emotions that come with trying to make sense of growing up in a chaotic home, and like I say, particularly the relationship with Kelly's alcoholic mother. If you've grown up in that kind of environment, or even if you haven't, there's a lot that you can learn from this interview, and I'm so pleased to be able to have the opportunity to interview Kelly and for her to be able to share in the way that she does. This is going out on COA week, which is literally coincidental as well in terms of the way that I've set all this up, so I think that just says everything. If you're affected by anything you do see in this video, please also know that you can contact NACOA, which you can find at nacoa.org.uk. If you haven't yet subscribed, please make sure that you have done so. Turn on those notifications so you know each and every time we post a new video. And I really hope that you enjoy this piece. Welcome. I'm really excited actually to have you on and to speak about this in this way. How are you feeling today?
I'm good, thank you. And I feel really honoured to be on here as well. So thank you so much for asking me, because it's a big deal. I love the videos and the work that you do. So it's lovely to be a guest. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's always funny how everyone's so grateful to be here, and I'm just grateful that you've shown up. So lots of gratitude. Just as a way of introduction, why don't you just quickly tell us who you are and what you're doing in the world today?
Okay, so I'm Kelly Pegg. I used to work in radio. I was a journalist and radio presenter, and now I run my own podcast, the Hot Mess Mums Club, with Jenny Powell, empowering women. It's a safe space for mums, really, somewhere they can come and feel supported, entertained. We're kind of creating this club, really, to kind of get through life.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm a mum of two and a wife, and I like to talk.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably why we get on.
Yeah.
And yeah, look, I love the podcast. I love your podcast. What I think you do, by the way, on the podcast, just quickly, is you like tackle the difficult conversations, but in a way that feels very reachable and relatable and not too serious. You know, there's an element of we're all just winging it, but let's try and look at some of the realities as well, right? Is that fair?
Yeah, that's it. That's perfect, I think. It sums it up perfectly. And our guests are all very different, but they all kind of reflect that, I think, which is really important, you know, and that's exactly what we aim to do. I think it expands each season, you know, which is great. So we've had Kerry Katona for season 6, who was amazing. So a lot of mental health stuff there and childhood trauma, but there was still a lot of laughter and uplifting kind of conversation as well. And we've got all sorts of different guests on this season. So we've got a body image expert, someone who supports mums and helps them love themselves after they've had children, you know, which is great. And we've also got a relationship expert on. So we're going to be talking about, you know, the fizzle and sizzle after you've been together a long time and you've had kids, and we've not gone there before either. And I think people, taboo subjects, I think we break, but yeah, we do it in a fun way.
Yeah, and you and Jen are both like truth seekers as well, which is important. So there's no, like, you know, you cut through the kind of top layer stuff and say, actually, what's the reality here? And I think it's needed in the world today, in a world where we're supposed to just portray ourselves in a certain way. You've got to cut through that, I think.
Yeah, we're probably a bit too honest sometimes, but yeah, you're right. It's a good thing. It's a really good thing. You know, there is too much artificial stuff out there, and that's not us or what we stand for. You know, we're kind of raw, and I think it's important.
Yeah, it's what's wanted. And actually, hopefully today we're going to tackle a little bit more rawness, right? So
yes.
Why don't we jump straight in? And I always start with the question of what adversity have you faced that's meant that you've had to be resilient.
Yeah, so I grew up with, or grew around my mum, who was an alcoholic. That's how I met you, really, because we hooked up with the charity Nakoa. So from a very small age, I was raised by 2.5. I was raised by my grandparents. I didn't live with my parents, but alcohol was a big feature in my life from a very young age. I knew what it was. I knew what it did to people, and I watched her battle it my whole life. And then when I was 19, it killed her. And she was I think she was 45. So no age at all. And that had a huge impact on me, much bigger than I realised at the time. That's been almost like dominoes falling, really, throughout my years, my 20s and my 30s. And I'm 40 this year, not until October. And I think it's only sort of now I'm in a much better place with it, and I'm talking about it on a public platform, and I've written about it as well. Because for years I've been battling it, really, and it's had lots of different effects on me.
Yeah. When you say like battling it, what do you think it was that made you stay so quiet about it, or not? You're sharing on a public level now. What do you think it was about the other years in your life that meant that you didn't share about it?
The shame, yeah. We were taught that it was something to be embarrassed about and ashamed about. And it's not, that was my nana, who's amazing, by the way. And without her, my brother and I would never have had the life that we have had. But she's she's 88. It's a generational thing. You don't talk about personal problems in your family. You don't get help. You don't tell people the truth. When she died, my gran said, right, you have to tell everybody she had a hemorrhage. It just happened. But everybody knew, So it was a stigma, a shame. Don't talk about it. And I always felt guilty that I shouldn't grieve, because she almost killed herself. Whereas I knew people who had lost loved ones through things like cancer, people who'd wanted to be here, and she didn't really want to live. So it was a mixture of guilt and shame, I think, that stopped me from talking about it, and anger, lots of anger.
Yeah. And it's funny, when I speak to people that have been in the same circumstances, we actually take on the shame of our parents' addiction in, you're talking about feeling guilt for the fact that your mum passed in the way that she did, and that it wasn't something more socially acceptable, right?
Yeah. Oh God, absolutely. I mean, there's a stereotype, and I think it still exists, where you're sort of bottom of the pile if you're an alcoholic. So if you're associated with that as well, what are you?
Yeah.
So it's kind of all of that, isn't it, together, I think.
Yeah.
That grows around you almost like a shroud, and you're just in it.
Yeah. And it almost feels like a betrayal,
Yeah.
when you come out, you feel like, simply airing your own struggles and needs feels like a betrayal of your parents, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. You feel guilty as well.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to say some nice things about them as well, because you feel like you're portraying them. Well, it's truthful, but what will people think about them? And especially if they're not here anymore, you feel like, you shouldn't be saying those things, because they're still your blood at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Still related.
Yeah. When you talked about feeling angry as well, was that anger? Who were you angry at? I know that seems a weird question, but who were you angry at?
Her, completely and utterly. My parents had a really dysfunctional relationship. My father was violent, and their relationship was, and I have to be careful what I say here, because I think he's still alive, but I don't have anything to do with him. They divorced when I was about 13. And so I moved from my nana's to her with my mum, moved in with my mum, because I wanted to be there and look after her. Because I'd only recently sort of realised what she was going through in this relationship. And my teenage years with her were really difficult. So from being 13 and sitting drinking with her till late at night, being introduced to alcohol, being allowed to smoke all the time, no rules, no regulations in the house. I became truant at school, was never around. I found myself in dangerous relationships with people, hanging around with dangerous people as well. And she wasn't there. As the years went on, the drinking got heavier. So it became completely she was like a completely functioning alcoholic. From the morning, from waking up in the morning, she would drink. And she would drink throughout the day, you know. So a lot of things happened. And then towards the end of my time with her, I'd gone to university, but my brother was really struggling with her. So I quit and I came home to be there for him because he was the smart one and I wanted him to do well. And I couldn't bear him going through what he was. You know, she would come in, I'm sure some of your guests have said this, she would come into his room at night and sometimes she'd be drunk and she'd be happy and she'd wake him up and just talk loads of rubbish. Other times she'd be angry and she'd be screaming at him. And I'd been through all of that. I couldn't bear that he was there on his own going through that. So I came back. So the end of our relationship was really bad. You know, we didn't get on at all. And so the anger was from all of that, because no matter what my dad was, which was not very much, you know, I felt that she was our mum. And especially since I've had my daughter, who's 7, I've got my son now, but when I had my daughter, I was 31. I couldn't understand how she could bring us into the world and do what she did to us. So the anger went on for a long time. You know, I would cry all day and then I would just be furious for weeks.
Yeah. And is that different now?
It is now, yeah. Less angry. I still don't understand. You know, I would never do that to my children. They are my everything. So, you know, all those moments I have with them, even the ones where they're driving me up the wall, are really special to me. And I often sit there and think, God, she missed out on all of this. Because my brother was a baby when my gran took him in. I was 2.5. So she had none of that time with us at all. You know, we saw them sporadically. But, you know, so I can't understand any of it. But I feel like since I started to talk about it, meet other people, talk to you, that obviously, and understand more about mental health, that she was in such a terrible place. And that makes me really sad as well, that she just suffered massively mentally, you know.
Yeah.
Back then, we didn't understand that.
Yeah.
You know.
But even when you do, and you know, because I've experienced the same thing, you know, I still have mixed emotions about it now. And I went on to have problems with alcohol myself, right? And I can package it up nicely. And sometimes it sits all right with me. And I go, you know what? He had a terrible time. He suffered his own, you know, trauma. And this is what happened to him. It wasn't about love and it wasn't about how much he cared about me, etc., etc., etc. But if I'm being totally honest, the question will always remain. You know, I stopped in the end and are there for my kids, and there'll always be that question. You know, if I could ask my dad one thing, it would be, was I not enough? You know?
Yeah. Yes. And I think that's, you know, that's something that will stay with you, with me, with everyone that's a child of an alcoholic, especially if you've lost them and they're not here anymore. I just found the anger ate me up so much, you know. It was more coming to terms with it and trying to be a bit more at peace with her, you know. But yeah, there are some days, and I always think like you know, I think, how could you? Just how could you do that to us, you know? And I think that rejection never leaves you. And unfortunately, it can have a profound effect on what you go looking for because of it, you know.
And was that the case for you in your life, what you went looking for?
Yeah, definitely. I was wild. so out of control. And I was looking for someone to protect me all the time, because I felt so unprotected and so unloved. So I would end up in bad relationships. I went after bad men.
Yeah.
Because I knew what I was going to get, but I had this thing that I could change them. Couldn't change my mum, could change them. Couldn't change the fact that my dad didn't want us, but could change them. I put myself in some really dangerous situations, and I didn't love myself because the same thing's always happened. It's a pattern, but then you always think that you're not good enough and it's your fault.
Yeah. How do you feel like you've come through that stuff? Have you come through it, I guess, would be the first question.
Well, I think so meeting my husband was probably a big part of that. He's not, sorry, that's our clock in the background. How annoying. Grandparents' clock. Bloody thing. I think going through being with him, even though he has no experience of what I had been through, nothing like that, and he's not a big drinker at all, neither are his parents, has helped a lot because he has helped me come through that. I've always been able to talk to him about stuff, and he's always there, and we have a healthy life. He's boring, I'm boring, we like our boring life together, we joke about it, but it's not up and then down, which is what I was used to. This incredible, my life was just like this all the time, in relationships, at home, wild nights out, and then dealing with the reality of it. I lived like that for so long and through my 20s, and it was exhausting.
Yeah.
So, we have this 2.4 with the kids, and, we're getting chickens. It's kind of really helped stabilise me, I guess, and I worked in radio for a long time, and that's a difficult career and a difficult industry to work in, and probably didn't always bring out the best in me because of what I'd been through.
Yeah.
So coming out of that,
in what way? How did it not bring out the best of you? It's
very cutthroat. So, people can, your boss at the time can love you. The people where you work love you. The best thing since sliced bread. Boom, then you're no good anymore. You didn't get your ratings that month. You're stuck to the side. There's a lot of rejection. And again, it involves in partnerships and group work, and there's a lot of egos, and there's all sorts of things that go on that bring out a lot of stuff, a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
I think coming away from that for me, even though I didn't realise it at the time, but it's probably been really beneficial.
Yeah. Have you had to take on some of your husband's family values, if you know what I mean, like in terms of when you had children and that, you've got no blueprint?
No, I mean, I suppose I was lucky with my grandparents because we had this really safe house, a safe love. We were taught, all the good things in life, work hard, lots of love, lots of, fun, support. They installed that in us. So I've got them to thank for that. I mean, I never thought I'd be a mum. I didn't want kids when I was in my 20s, and that was through fear, really. What happens if I'm the same? What happens if I feel like that? I don't want my kids. And so when I all of a sudden, felt like I wanted a baby, it was a big thing for me. And I think I was really worried about what type of mum I'd be. So I'd say my family values go back to Nan and Grandad, really.
Yeah, and that's really so important. Do you know what because obviously I speak to a lot of people in this situation. So many of them point to a grandparent or an aunt or some kind of loving, nurturing adult that was able to show up for them in their life.
Yeah.
And when you actually look at it, there's a relatively simple solution to a big problem that we have in our society of supporting young children that don't have a nurturing available adult, right? Is to have nurturing available adults for them. I think it's so important.
It's heartbreaking to think Adam and I were so lucky, you know,
Yeah.
to have them. And we lost my granddad. My nan is, you know, still such a big part of our lives. You know, I speak to her 5 times a day. She's, you know, everything. Without them, we would have ended up in care. There is no way around that, you know.
Yeah.
So it does really hurt me to think there are other children out there that don't have that, you know.
And I can feel it in your voice. I can feel it in your voice when you talk about it. You know, it brings up. Yeah.
I just know snippets. You know, when we used to stay with them at weekends, or we used to have to go away with them in the summer holiday for a week, and we didn't want to go. And I can't explain, you know, it's hard to sort of explain it, but it's things like, you know, they would drink on the beach until they fell asleep. We were just left. They would be so drunk at night that they would be both out of it. You know, anything could have happened to Adam and I. They wouldn't know about it. You know, it's those kind of things I think about. My memories of them when we did see them on a Saturday evening would just be beer cans everywhere, you know. It's all drink. I never saw them without a drink. So, yeah, to think that there are children that just have that 24/7, all the time, no escape.
Yeah,
You know?
Especially in lockdown.
Oh, yeah, unimaginable. You know that kids, because there are kids out there that are better off in school, and you know they are safer there and looked after better there.
Yeah,
so, yeah, I find that really sad.
Yeah, their only relief is in school. Some of these kids. Did you have any? Did your mum ever have any sober periods? Were there any times when you really connected with your mum in the way that a daughter should?
No, not really. There was, I think, so they, I think I was about 14 maybe, and she ended up in hospital with severe liver cirrhosis. And they told her that if she carried on drinking, she would die. I was just furious with her, you know, so angry. My nan and granddad had to sort of say, you can't visit her in a hospital. When you go in, you upset her, you know. They just protected her all the time.
Yeah.
And I get why. You know, she was their only child. But I was full of rage for what she was doing to us all. And this fear that we were going to lose her, that she was going to die. So she came out and we tried, but it was like walking on eggshells constantly. And snappiness, the anger, the irritation, the everything. She just didn't want to do it. And I would beg her to like sit up and watch a movie with me and all those things that I do with my daughter. And I'm sure you do with your kids, you know. And she just didn't want to do it. I think she lasted a week or so. That was it.
Really, yeah.
So that's the only time I remember. She didn't want to be sober.
Yeah. And that's so hard to hear, you know. Really hard to hear. What do you think has sort of enabled you to come through it in the way that you have? Because the person that you are, that, you know, sits in front of me today, you just wouldn't, you know, you talk about being wayward and crazy and, you know, putting yourselves in these dangerous positions. It's hard to fathom that you'd be like that, right? So what do you think got you through those times? What do you think's enabled you, as well as, you know, you talked a little bit about your husband and the part that's played, but what do you think's enabled you to get through it?
A grit and determination, probably, or a drive, I think. Not necessarily a healthy one, maybe, for a start. This drive of, you know, nothing I've ever done has been good enough. That kind of feeling of rejection that we mentioned earlier. This drive of, I will not be the same. You know? And I worked really hard to get my job, to get into radio. It was really tough industry to get into back when I was 20. And it was, you know, I wouldn't give up. I just kept going and going until I got where I wanted to get. And I think it was a determination not to be the same, to show people that I wasn't this sort of no mark, really. You know, because that's how I felt I was treated. I was treated like that at secondary school. You know, I was trouble, I wasn't going to be anybody, you know, cast aside, told that I should go in the army from the careers advisor. You know, those things stay with you. And so I had this determination that I was going to do well in my life. And I think that drove me through it, even though a lot of the time I was in pain.
Yeah.
You know, and then becoming a mother has been the greatest gift ever for me. So that's changed so much again for me. You know, and I don't drink anymore either, and because I just don't want it. You know.
Yeah. It's almost like the drive has come from a place of like, I'll show you, almost like a resentful that I'll show you that I can make it, right? And then that gets you through to the part of you that kind of, I don't know, the flower comes out of the kind of search for the light, yeah, and then you reach this place where you become who you were always meant to be, I think.
Yeah, a dark. So it does. You're right, and it is the dark place that it comes from. My husband has to say to me now, "You don't need to prove anything anymore. There's nothing you need to do now. You need to just let go. You don't need to do this. You don't need to do that. You're fine." But in those years before, that was the drive. Yeah, all the time. You know, I will show you, all of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does it still show up today? Does it still show up in your life today, the impact of it?
Yeah, sure, definitely. I think the reason I stopped drinking was because I felt like sometimes I'd have a glass of wine because I wanted to numb how I was feeling. I didn't like that at all, and it started to sort of wake me up in the middle of the night, thinking, "No, that I don't want it in my life." So, and it was all that is all connected with her and what she did, and I don't want it around my kids. You know, I don't want them seeing me handle life like that. That's not what I want. I have days where I will cry a lot about her. I had one last week.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just think about it and feel really sad. And it still shows up in the way sometimes I behave, because I have this thing where, you know, if I think someone's going to reject me, I'll reject them first. I also have this thing where if, you know, someone is doing something which I really don't like, then I just don't forgive them.
Yeah.
I have to work really hard on those things and understand that my values are my values, but other people's can be different and they can still be in my life. If that makes sense.
It does make total sense. It makes total sense, yeah. And I think, you know, I think it's one of them things that will show up in our lives forever, right? In some way or another. And it's about how we notice it and what we do with what we notice, right? I think that's been true for me. Certainly as I watch my kids grow up, you know, and of course you're going to be sad about it, because, you know, every now and then I'll watch something with my daughter or my son and think, wow, this is just incredible. And then straight away I'll get panged with, did my dad ever look at me in the way that I look at my kids? Did he ever have a moment where he looked and thought, wow, Josh is just everything that I've ever dreamed of? And I'll never know. And people can say, I'm sure he did. And I can say, I'm sure he did. But the truth is, the hardest truth is there'll never be answers to certain questions, and there'll never be fixes. I have to live with them the best that I can.
You do. And it's funny, isn't it? Do you ever look at your kids and think about him and think you missed out on all of this?
Yeah.
I do that a lot. I think, how could you not been around, you know?
Yeah.
See them.
Yeah.
But it is the unanswered questions. They haunt you, and they'll always haunt us a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
Hey, there is no answer.
Yeah, there is none. No. And I think sometimes it is hard. And sometimes we try and create answers. And I've always done, you know, I can package it up nicely for people if they want. And I can go, you know, he had his struggles. He went through what he went through. You know, it wasn't that he didn't love me. He had an illness, end of. And I can say that. And it sounds great. And it can almost sometimes land with me. But then I'll have other moments where I think it doesn't cut it though.
No. And it's such a selfish disease. It's such a selfish, if you think it's a disease, everyone has different opinions on it, or addiction. It's such a selfish thing. Addicts are so selfish. Everything is about them, and nobody understands that everyone around them is affected and impacted so badly, so deeply. And that's hard when your memories of them are just memories where they were just utterly selfish and never there for you. You know, there to iron your clothes, get your school kit ready, cook your dinner, you know, God.
Yeah. just
more life.
Be there and so you don't have to worry when something's gone wrong. Just walk through the door and know, well, whatever happens, my mum and dad will be there and they'll make it all right. You didn't have it, because they never made it all right.
And you can't, when you've got kids and you are there and you're scooping them up all the time and you're their wall, you're their rock, you're their everything, you think, of course, growing up and not having that, it's bound to have an impact on us and all the other children out there right now going through it. Because your parents are the two people in the world that are supposed to lay down their life for you. That's to be the ones you run to, pick up the pieces, make you feel safe. So when they don't, and that carries on for years, of course, everyone's going to be impacted. You know, you are going to be impacted by that in some way. It's going to have some effect on your life.
Yeah. Okay, look, I'm conscious of time. It's one of them where we'd end up talking for 2 hours here if we're not careful. I do want to ask you what you think everything that you've been through has taught you about you. What do you think you've learned about yourself as a person?
Crikey. Oh dear. I'm probably that I'm okay. You know, I think that's I'm okay. I'm good the way I am, and it isn't my fault that those things happened. That's taken a long time to get in my head, and also I am enough.
Yeah.
But those sort of things are only just starting to come through for me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, you know, you'll always get the same reaction when you ask a COA, what have you learned about yourself? Because they go, oh, you want me to say something nice about myself? It's like really hard, right? You just always say, if you want to see a COA squirm, just ask them that question. But it is, you know, and all we've ever wanted is to be lovable just as we are.
Yes.
For someone to just be like, to meet us in exactly who we are and say that we're enough. That's all we've ever wanted, you know?
And to love ourselves. And I think that's something, I know it's corny, but I've just started to do, you know?
Yeah.
I love myself.
Yeah.
I'm proud of me. And so therefore I look after me, you know? And that's really important because growing up around addiction, it's destructive. And what it did to me was make me a destructive person as well. You know, it led me to be destructive with myself. So I think that's really important. Because we don't say nice things about ourselves. I don't know why that is. I don't know what that's about. You know, that's because, like you probably say, we don't think we've been lovable. We've not been enough. We've not been lovable. You know.
Exactly. Self-love is not something that you're supposed to learn as an adult. It's something that you're supposed to be taught when you're a child, and you're taught it by the only time in our lives where we're supposed to have completely unconditional love is in our childhood, and it's supposed to come from a parent, right? And it's that unconditional love, it's that dependence upon a loving and nurturing adult that breeds a secure independence in adults, right? And we didn't get it. So of course we grew up struggling to love ourselves, you know, in a way that other people maybe don't, because we didn't get taught it when we should have.
Yeah, it's that thing, isn't it? You know, like when you're younger and you're around people and they're so confident.
Yeah.
How are you like that? You know.
Yeah.
And it's something else to try and ever let anyone else understand that who hasn't been through it. I don't think they can.
No, and it's hard. And you know, I talk about, I watch my wife sometimes. I remember when we first got together and stuff at the beginning, and I would watch her lean on her mum and dad sometimes very naturally, and a bit of me got uncomfortable, and I used to think, you can't lean on your parents like that, right? You've got to stand on your own 2 feet. And then I started to realize, actually, she's just got two loving parents that are there and have always wanted to help her and support her, and she feels supported. And that changed my outlook on everything, really, from realizing how my desire to be ultra independent was a reaction to my life experiences, you know.
Yeah, it's like a light bulb moment though, isn't it, when things like that happen?
Yeah.
It's a massive learning journey that you're going on because of everything that's happened to you.
Yeah.
And it continues.
Sure.
You know, there are more light bulb moments to come, I think, probably. Well, I think there are for me.
Well, they'll never stop. They'll never stop. That's the reality, you know. I'm always looking to learn more anyway on the journey. Just lastly, as a way of kind of wrapping it up, if people want to reach out to you, where's the best place to find you? I'll put everything in the comments, but just as a way of saying.
Yeah, so the podcast Instagram page is at the Hot Mess Mums, and then my personal Instagram is at the official Hot Mess Mum. I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll put it all in there so people can see it anyway. And you're easily findable if people want you. Is there? Look, firstly, from my perspective, I just want to say thank you. You know, we've had a few of these conversations now, and I don't know if we talk about the same stuff just over and over again each time that we do it, or if they're different. But I know, you know, I feel like we could do another hour or two, and we'd probably just go back round and start again with what we've done. But I'm very grateful, genuinely grateful for you sharing in the way that you have and using your experiences to help other people. You know, it's sort of immeasurable, and it's important to reflect on just how much impact it does have on people. So I want to say thank you, and just leave it for you if you want to add anything before we close.
Oh, no, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I just hope that when I do these things, that if there's anyone watching, it helps them in some way. You know, if I could say anything, it would be talk about it. Find someone you can trust and talk to. Don't be ashamed. Don't feel ashamed. It's not your fault. And, you know, for all those young people as well that are younger than me, just, talk about it and find the right people. Don't suffer, you know, in the way that maybe I did. And lots of people do, because there is lots of help out there. Wonderful Nakoa. And, you know, it's just really important to not inspire, but let people know they're not alone and it is okay. You know, because I find it really sad when I think about kids going through what I did. It tears me up.
Yeah.
So
well,
hopefully these talks help break that stigma.
They will, and they'll be available to people to see, you know, to let them know that they're not alone, and to give them hope, and to let them know that, you know, life can change, and you can get everything you've ever wanted. I never knew I wanted this. The boring life that I've got now until I had it, and then the chaos that I thought I loved, I was glad to leave it behind. So it's a story of hope as well.
Yeah, definitely. It doesn't define you, you know.
No, totally. Right, thank you. I'm going to wrap it up here, but it's been incredible, and I'm so grateful. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's lovely to see you.
Yeah, likewise.